But moving into the top 10 now, we will start with the Ope Ope no Mi, and now we have one of the most broken fruits in all of One Piece. The Ope Ope no Mi is so powerful that Oda really needs to dumb down his writing and just sort of pretend it doesn't exist a lot of the time. The user of this fruit can effectively play God with anyone or anything caught within a room. Cut them up, swap their bodies, remove people's hearts in mini rooms, and teleport things. You can do basically whatever you want. And that's why we have a perfect 10 for power and shockingly high scores for utility and potential, because when you're given the powers of God, that turns out to be pretty useful. What definitely holds the Ope Ope no Mi back is the cost of its use. Firstly, one does need to create a room which puts a limit on the power, and yes, you can extend that room to quite an amazing range, but after a while that will come at the cost of stamina and even potentially life force. And as a further detriment, if you did want to use the crowning ability of the Ope Ope no Mi, being the perpetual youth surgery, well, that will cost your life. So that's a pretty big detriment to me. Still, the rest of the fruit's costs are almost certainly worth the rewards. Moving to number 9 now, we have the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi. Now, in very simplistic terms, this fruit gives its user the ability to push things. Push things with plush new paw pads that become permanently affixed to the hands of the user. And this is so much better than it sounds. Much like Brulee's mirror defense, the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi is able to counter any attack the user is presented with, and on top of that, it's also capable of generating its own attacks by pushing and condensing air to the point where it becomes a series of increasingly devastating shockwaves. As for utility and potential, this fruit can either send you or a thing or a person of your choice anywhere in the world. You just get pushed and then 3 days later, you're there, which can also be invoked as a sort of short-range teleport style effect. But the really weird and kind of mind-boggling thing is that this fruit can even push away intangible concepts such as pain, thus resulting in the instant healing of all pain and fatigue. The only real detriment to this fruit is how very hand-based it is, and the user needs to be very on top of their game. And I suppose growing paw pads may also mildly impact your lifestyle, maybe, but that's it. Otherwise, we have yet another ridiculous fruito. And they will only get more ridiculous as we step into number 8, which is the Gasu Gasu no Mi. And now we have our second Logia type fruit to appear on this list, which gives the user the ability to conjure, manipulate, and become gas. What kind of gas, you ask? Well, I guess any kind of gas. This fruit is everything that the Moku Moku no Mi wishes it was. Whilst not being given a super great score for power, the ability to remove all oxygen from any given area is quite notable and will result in an easy victory on 99.9% of occasions. Not to mention all of the other ways to wield gas in combat and your innate Logia state. But given that gas is such a general substance, this is very much like the gravity argument again, because being able to manipulate such a fixture of existence holds so much potential, and as such, it's almost a shame to see it being used as a weapon by the crazed Caesar clown. Becoming gas also allows you to fly through a propulsion system, which as we know is an easy 9 for utility. There aren't that many powers that can change your day-to-day life more than flight. And your detriments are quite minimal. Just be careful not to suffocate or explode those close to you, and bam, you've got yourself one fine fruit. Perhaps not quite as fine as number 7 though, the Ito Ito no Mi, because this fruit is ridiculous. The ability to create and manipulate strings has been seriously abused in One Piece. As with most generation style paramecias, the Ito Ito no Mi was given a magnificent score for utility and potential because, as demonstrated by Doflamingo, you can essentially craft anything. Living puppets, giant bird cages, entire string clones that come complete with realistic coloring somehow, and even temporary internal organs. Add the idea that these strings are both incredibly sharp and nigh on unbreakable, and that gives us a solid score for power as well. The only thing that even mildly lets down the team here is the detriment area, because this fruit can't just be used by anyone. It takes a pretty sharp-minded individual to make the best use of the Ito Ito no Mi, and given how crazy powerful these strings are, there is also a huge chance of unintentional damage or even death caused by whimsical activation. So just be careful with this one. Stepping into number 6 though, we have the Soru Soru no Mi. The ability to manipulate the souls of others, as well as yourself, is a terrifying one indeed. And while it does only work under the condition of fearing the user, it is still an instant win in most situations, gaining a 10 for power. Now as for utility, well, that's where the homies come in. This fruit allows one to fracture souls and place them into objects to create a Disney-like army of minions, basically meaning that upon consumption, you are instantly crowned the king or queen of your own empire. The potential, however, is limited by the fear factor and the strict manipulation of soul matter. In many ways, this doesn't quite have as much potential as generating and manipulating any other reality-based substance, so apart from a potential awakening, I think we've seen the pinnacle of what we can do here. And the fear factor is also why it gets half a point taken away as a detriment as well. There's not a whole lot more to say though, just another ungodly dominant fruit in all categories.